We have nearly a complete offensive line heading into fall camp. We'll talk about who's expected to start. We got more OU Media Day takeaways as well. All that on today's episode of Locked On Sooners.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. My name is John Williams. You can follow me on Twitter at John9Williams. My buddy here is Josh Helmer. You can follow him on Twitter at JoshOnRef. You can also hear him Monday through Friday from 9 to noon on 94.7 The Ref in Norman. And Josh, OU Media Day was the meeting of the day. It's what you and I were both able to attend, and we have a lot of takeaways from that. We'll get to some of them in the second segment. We'll talk about the latest commitment to the 2024 cycle in the third segment, so make sure you stick through the whole show. But first, Jeff Lebby really didn't mince any words when he talked about who was going to be starting on the offensive line from left to right. We got Walter Rouse at left tackle. Left guard, still going to be quite a competition. Center, Andrew Rame. Right guard, McCade Matire, and right tackle, Tyler Guyton. Now, I think we expected, the tackles and Rame to be all starting, but maybe figured there'd be a little bit more guard competition at both left and right. Well, it's pretty clear McCade Matire is a starter.
Yeah, surprised that Jeff Lebby was that transparent about this. Honestly, sort of floored that happened this morning. I mean, bright and early, Jeff Lebby was the first individual that we heard from today. So if you don't really know how today worked, Jeff Lebby and Ted Roof, we'll get to hear from those guys, the two coordinators throughout camp. Obviously, we'll hear from Brent Venables, but in terms of what is scheduled the rest of the way right now, this was sort of the only chance to hear from all of the assistant coaches and from the 19 players that we heard from today, though some of those I'm sure will be return faces over the course of camp. But in terms of the assistant coaches, I mean, a lot of these coaches we were only going to hear from maybe once throughout fall camp. And it all got started with Jeff Lebby, who, again, we'll hear a little bit more from than just the one time. But for him to start this thing off with a home run was like not expected, I don't think, to basically find out in a world of college football where generally speaking, things are fairly buttoned up, John. Here we know today, I think we have a pretty good idea from the offensive coordinator's mouth. Here's 4 of the 5 starters.
And I think to me, it signals a bit of what you maybe heard throughout the day is this is a much more confident football team heading into this season than maybe they were a year ago. And I think it breeds confidence that you have 4 of your 5 offensive linemen picked out. Now, there will be rotations and guys will, that are on the 2 deep will get to play. I think they're making a strong emphasis in that they want their depth to be able to step in and play. And then you always end up with injuries, attrition during camp. Somebody just gets dinged up and you're going to have to rely on that 2 deep a little bit. But it looks like that the only major offensive line competition to get going is going to be at left guard. And I mean, you've got a great group of guys to choose from at the position with Caleb Schaefer, Caden Green, Savion Bird, who we've talked about off and on this show, Jake Taylor. I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody over there. Troy Everett, the Appalachian State transfer. So you've got quite a few guys that are going to give you good options, but I think it really does say something that you have a really nice group to start with, including 3 really strong veteran options in Rouse, Rame, and Matire, and then a right tackle in Tyler Guyton, who, I mean, might have as much upside as anybody on the team that could potentially play himself into a top 100 pick after not really starting much going into the season, but because of his athletic tools, I mean, he's going to have a chance to really turn some heads this year.
Not that Schaefer couldn't or that Everett couldn't, or that Jake Taylor couldn't, John, but I kind of feel like there's a pretty good chance that maybe we know the starting 5 for Oklahoma's offensive line, because I feel like Savion Bird is going to wind up as your starting left guard. So we'll see. Obviously, there's a competition to be had right there. You can't just totally anoint somebody, but I came away very impressed with what we saw in the Cheez-It Bowl from Bird. And so I kind of think that from where I'm standing right now, John, we've got a pretty good idea, at least, again, that's what Jeff Lebby said. And it probably bears mentioning that Bill Bedenbaugh was the first guy to say that no job is won. Nobody's got anything. So it was totally the opposite from the offensive line coach. And yet you got the offensive coordinators basically giving us a pretty good picture, I think, of where things stand. And yet, nobody's just locked up a job entirely. So things could, be fluid. They could change a little bit between now and the end of camp. But, just going off what the offensive coordinator, Jeff Lebby, said and what I saw from Savion Bird in the bowl game, John, I kind of think that we know the 5 that it's going to wind up being for OU, at least to start.
Well, and I even asked Jeff Lebby about Savion Bird in kind of in the assistant, gathering, so to speak. After Jeff Lebby was done at the podium, I asked him several questions about the offensive line, and we ended up with Savion Bird, and he spoke really highly of him. Just talked about how he's a physical player and a guy that likes to play through the whistle, and something that you need on your offensive line. We talked about it on the show earlier this week that you need a little bit of nasty. You need somebody who's going to be able to mix it up and is going to play through the whistle and really get under guys' skin with the way that he plays the game. And I really do think that Savion Bird brings an edge element to that offensive line group that maybe they don't have elsewhere. I mean, it's a good group and it's a strong group, and they're going to be able to run the football really, really well, just like they did last year. But you need somebody who's willing to kind of like do that dirty work and I don't know, kind of be the physical enforcer a little bit on your team. And man, he's got the strength to do it, and he's going to have the size to do it too. But it is intriguing and encouraging, at least, that they've got a lot of options.
Sure it is. Yeah. I mean, feels like they're in a pretty good place right now. And, you say that we've got a pretty good idea of how things are going. And yet you get the impression, too, that Schaefer and Everett and Taylor, I mean, there's some other names, obviously Bird, who we've talked about in the competition there. There's some names that this group, this coaching staff feels good about. So if that is the 5, it's not, and Bill Bedenbaugh offensive lines have shown us this in the past, John, that, okay, if that's a starting point, that's not necessarily a finishing point.
And we'll have more takeaways here coming up next, and we'll talk about the latest commitment to the 2024 class a little bit later in the show. First, we're going to talk to you about our friends here at LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. That was the phrase of the day when it came to transfer portal additions, recruiting additions at OU Media Days, finding the right fits for this team, not just people, not just players, but the right players, the right people. And if Brent Venables would have had LinkedIn to go to, it'd have made that job so much easier. So go to linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Use their purple hashtag hiring frame, add it to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience, so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs number 1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. So Josh, give me kind of one of your big takeaways from OU Media Day today.
LinkedIn Jobs is trying to create competitive depth is my biggest takeaway. I joke, but that was a buzz term, right? Competitive depth. It's like everywhere you turned, that was a phrase for Oklahoma. So, and I'm knocking on wood here that hopefully this doesn't turn into the 2023 version of, hey, we're close. We're right there. We're close. Right. And I could sense that from Sooner Nation today. The text line with the radio station was having fun with that. And some of the social media buzz that it's like, oh man, no, here we go again. But, to take that joke and unpack it, John, I do think that Oklahoma, while that's like company line or that's the buzz phrasing. I think that that's face value. That's honest from Oklahoma, that across the board, whether you're talking to Jeff Lebby or you're talking to the head coach, Brent Venables, or, just on the line, any assistant coach, Jay Valai, whoever you want to speak to, that they feel because of the way they've recruited John and because of what they've done in the transfer portal that, yes, they have created that, wait for it, competitive depth.
And they need to, based on what they lost last year, the number of plays everybody played last year. And I think in addition to the transfer portal, the recruiting class, I think a lot of it just also comes back to just experience. Guys like Jaron Canick, Kobe McKenzie, they've got another years of experience or another offseason of experience in the program to where they're able to fine tune and go deeper into the playbook than what they were able to do a year ago, as they're just trying to get acclimated to college football. A guy like Gentry Williams, who looks to be in line to potentially start opposite of Woody Washington. All these guys are able to take what went well and what didn't go well a year ago and build upon that and go even deeper because they've got more experience at the collegiate level, more experience with understanding expectations from Brent Venables and the coaching staff, both on and off the field, understanding what's required of them in the playbook and what's required of them with Schmitty. I mean, so much of what today was also discussed, and could be a really big takeaway itself, was how many guys had great workout sessions, great summer workouts for the Oklahoma Sooners. And a lot of that, it just comes back to, okay, now everybody's had a full year in the program. At least, the guys that were here in 2022 have been in there full year. They're coming back around to their second time with Schmitty, their second time in the nutrition process, second time in the off season, in the film room with the assistants. There was really only one position that was turned over year to year, and that was that wide receiver. But you bring in a more experienced wide receivers coach to coach the group, and Emmett Jones. And so all that continuity, that's huge for a team. And then it kind of creates stability and a little bit of security almost, in that, it's kind of that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? You got to feel secure so that you can develop as a child. If your needs aren't met and you're not feeling secure because there's a bunch of turnover and there's uncertainty and all that, then you're not going to be able to develop right as a child. The same could potentially be said for a college football player. Year one of Brent Venables 2022 was about just a bunch of turnover, the unsettled nature, whether it was the coaching staff turnover or the number of guys lost to the NFL and the transfer portal. So much turnover over the first year and a half under Brent Venables. Well, a lot of the guys that were part of this team last year, they have that security, that stability. The coaching staff is all the same. There wasn't any turnover except for LD Washington to Emmett Jones. But again, potentially, and this is no disrespect to LD Washington, he just wasn't very experienced as a wide receivers coach. You get somebody who's very, very experienced at the position now to really help develop and help those wide receivers take the next step. But I think that's true for everybody across the board. They've got that experience in the program. They've seen it. They've done it. They know it's expected. And now they can just focus on improving at doing their job, whether it's in the weight room, in the film room, on the field, on campus, in class. All of the things can be better because they now have a better understanding of what's going to be required if they want to excel at the University of Oklahoma.
To your point about it's, Maslow's hierarchy here and year one to year two, and are your needs met and so on and so forth. Miguel Chavis had an interesting, I don't know how I wasn't over there for this portion of the conversation. I just saw the tweet from Parker Thune that Miguel Chavis was making the remark that basically at one point Clemson fans, not too far back, wanted to fire Dabo Swinney, and Miguel Chavis' thing was, they wanted to fire Dabo Swinney. This is nuts, right? And so that just speaks to the, obviously revisionist history here. You win multiple national championships and Clemson becomes, okay, if they're not a blue blood historically, which they're not, but of this modern, last 10 years or whatever, Clemson's one of the powers in the sport, right? And that speaks to the consistency element. Michigan, right? Same thing, where folks were ready to run Harbaugh out of town, and probably for better reason there, maybe than at Clemson with Dabo Swinney initially. So it just speaks to, hopefully for Oklahoma, as we have some of the similar conversations that we've had about Brent Venables and this staff, John, which is it's just going to be better in year two, and you just have to have that faith. I think we got a sense of a lot of that today from across the board, this coaching staff, not just that remark from Miguel Chavis, but just the comfort across the board, I think, was one of the big takeaways today.
It was. And I think that's going to be why they're able to take steps and be more successful this year, is people aren't operating from a place of less understanding. Everybody's got more understanding of the playbook, the defense. There's a lot of talk about a guy like R. Mason Thomas, who's becoming more consistent. Miguel Chavis talked about how he's had elite consistency throughout the offseason. And I think that's part of the reason why we're going to see an elite pass rusher start to develop before our eyes, because he's got all the tools in the toolbox. He's got the twitch, the quickness, the agility, the bend. I mean, he's got the tenacity. I mean, the motor. This guy's going to have a chance to be really, really, really good. It's just a matter of putting it all together and being consistent. And it sounds like with the offseason that he's had, I mean, Miguel Chavis is just as excited about him as a lot of Sooner fans are.
So 2 final takeaways from me, and I'm sure as we unearth, not even unearth, but revisit more of the audio and video, that it was sort of information overload today for John, myself, and others. But as we kind of spend more time, dissecting it, more will come to the surface. But just from day one, Jaquaize Pettaway, the way that Jeff Lebby lit up when he was asked about Jaquaize Pettaway, he said, yeah, Oklahoma fans are going to like this guy. He's going to be a good one. So that to me was one of the big takeaways today, is that it's not shocking. Wide receiver again. How many times throughout the offseason, John, have we said somebody needs to step up? Somebody needs to step up. Oh, by the way, hey, true freshman, you can step in, or transfer portal guys, you can step in and be a difference maker. I think the first breadcrumbs were laid out today that Jaquaize Pettaway could be that guy. And then the other piece, just from talking with Beanbo for an extended portion of time, John, was not, okay, hey, here's the 4 out of the 5 that are set. Again, Beanbo kind of said much to the opposite. But what he said was, and I'm paraphrasing here, which is a little bit of a dangerous game, but I'll do my best. Basically, he said not that last season was bad for the offensive line. He thought it was mostly good, but it wasn't totally up to their standard. And as he gets set for this season, the questions that he has for fall camp, what he needs to answer going into the year, it's a group that he thinks he has enough talent, John. They've got the talent. Now it's about putting the pieces together. So whatever you make of that, right, which is he thinks they're good enough to be better than last year's group, to the standard of Oklahoma offensive line play that Sooner fans, I think, early in Bedenbaugh's tenure have come to know and love. So he wasn't ready to just go make some big proclamation that, hey, this is a Joe Moore award-winning offensive line and look at all these different battles. But I do think that he feels good about the group, John.
And I think there's reason to feel good about the group, because you've got guys with a lot of experience in Walter Rouse and Andrew Rame and McCade Mathier, guy that got his feet wet last year in Tyler Guyton, and then a really good group of players battling it out for other spots along the offensive line. So it is a really, really intriguing group. And it comes down to just being more efficient throughout the offense, more efficient on first down, running the football, more efficient on third down, trying to convert third and fourth downs. And if the offensive line is a little bit better, they'll be better at that as well. We'll have so many more takeaways throughout this week. I mean, we didn't even touch on what was said about Gavin Freeman in multiple contexts. I think there's a lot to discuss about Gavin Freeman, and we'll do that on tomorrow's show, especially because I think this is going to be a guy that we're going to be speaking highly of throughout this season. But we got to talk about the latest commitment for the Oklahoma Sooners. That is 2024 3-star quarterback, the Northwestern flip, Brendan Zurbrugg, a kid out of Ohio. Again, a 3-star prospect. The Sooners, taking advantage of all of the unrest up at Northwestern amid the hazing scandal that saw Pat Fitzgerald lose his job. So it's a very intriguing addition. So now it gives Oklahoma 2 quarterbacks in the 2024 cycle. And, it's odd, but when you look at what the quarterback room could look like next year, if Dylan Gabriel decides to go pro. Now, again, here's another topic for discussion. He could potentially come back for a 6th year in 2024. Davis Bevel likely out the door. If Gabriel and Bevel are both gone, you're looking at a room before Zurbrugg commits. That's Jackson Arnold, Michael Hawkins, General Booty. I mean, that's a really young group with not a lot of experience. So you kind of want to have some options available to you to not get caught in a similar situation that you were in the Red River Showdown a year ago.
Sure. And, what you hear about Brendan Zurbrugg is somebody that's going to come in with the expectation that, hey, this is an opportunity for me to develop. John, is yes, all of our recruiting conversations are brought to us by LinkedIn Jobs. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. This is, again, this is not your 4-5-star commit for Oklahoma that, hey, you've got the Jackson Arnold hype surrounding it, or even, Michael Hawkins, I think, is going to arrive at Oklahoma, John, as in part because of, being in Texas and the offenses and such that he's run. He kind of comes in players that he's been surrounded by at times, right? One that in Devon Mitchell obviously is a part of this class for Oklahoma too, but you come in with an expectation to be college ready, even though, no freshman are you totally ready to just throw everything at. And yet I think with Brendan Zurbrugg, it's maybe a little bit different than some of the other quarterback commits that they've picked up. But looks like a talented kid. And obviously Oklahoma, John, as we've discussed, they've kind of had their hearts set on taking multiple quarterbacks. Now they've gotten it accomplished.
Yeah, and I don't think this is going to be something that they make a habit of. I think once you kind of get Arnold, Hawkins, Zurbrugg on campus, then you're looking at adding Kevin Sperry in 2025. That'll be a really nice quarterback room to keep building on, as Jackson Arnold then goes pro and you turn it over to the 2024 guys for the future. So it's still a very intriguing group. And I mean, recruiting is still kind of just getting started almost, because we still have several high profile, recruitments to come to fruition. It's David Stone, Williams Nwaneri, Caden Durham, Michael Boganowski, the kid that's being heavily pursued by Oregon that I can't think of his name right now, and it's driving me crazy, and Josh is going to find it as we speak.
Mr. Platt.
Yeah. Braden Platt, excuse me. Josh Isosa has got to commit. Eddie Pierre-Louis, we're still waiting on his, commitment date and where he's going to end up going. So a lot of recruitment still to happen. And I know there's been a ton of Williams Nwaneri talk on the socials and the message boards lately. And it's like I said in our YouTube short last week, if you're not subscribed to the channel, we're dropping YouTube shorts here and there. So make sure you're subscribed on YouTube. But man, I'm not worried, man. One, because I'm not going to get up in arms about a high school kid's decision. But two, I just believe in Todd Bates and Miguel Chavis and their ability to recruit and develop defensive line prospects. So I just think that there's way too much still in Oklahoma's favor, aside from, being 3 hours further from Columbia. That's about the only thing I can get out of why he might choose Missouri versus Oklahoma. Yeah, proximity matters and being close to home matters in this recruitment. But I mean, 4.5 hours, that's not far. Like, that's a day trip. You can drive, up to Lee Summit North and back in a day. Yeah, it's a long drive, but you can do it. It's an easy flight, even from the Kansas City area to Oklahoma City. So that's not that big of a deal. So it'll be fascinating to see where this all finishes. It looks like middle of the month, around August 14th, is when he's going to commit. I'm still really confident that it's going to be Oklahoma until it's not.
Caden Green, by the way, was asked about Williams Nwaneri by Brandon Drum today. And he said, we'll see what happens. He wasn't ready to say, oh, he's coming to Oklahoma or not. He did say, yeah, absolutely. He's working on the recruitment as best he can. And he's hoping that this Lee Summit North pipeline just keeps rolling along for Oklahoma, which obviously it's been a nice little pipeline all of a sudden for OU. And there's a couple of other targets. Williams Nwaneri, of course, the big fish in that regard. So kind of a little interesting other nugget of media days today. So yeah, I'm with you. I'm not ready to write the death of the Oklahoma football program if Nwaneri picks Missouri or picks Oregon, though, these types of recruitments for Oklahoma to go where everybody kind of wants them to go, it feels paramount. Again, you just landed PJ Atabare in the class before it. We'll see if PJ this season or next is just going to step right in and be that type of star guy. A lot could happen between now and then, separate from Williams Nwaneri picking or not picking Oklahoma, for OU fans to be like, okay, yeah, it's no big deal. Or for Oklahoma fans for that panic to just, ratchet up a little bit more. So without us knowing kind of what 23 looks like, John, and sort of the totality of what Oklahoma's young edge guys look like, it's tough to feel one way or another way, I think, about the recruitment. It's important.
Yeah. And I mean, you still got a Nigel Smith recruitment that you're heavily favored to win at this point. So you've got edge options. You got Wyatt Gilmore as part of the class, but man, you gotta land Williams Nwaneri. It's not the end of the world, but it's a big part of your world as you head into the SEC. That's going to do it for today's show. Again, be tuned in all week long. We'll have more OU Media Day takeaways. Fall camp is starting up. We'll continue to talk about that and hear, we'll react to whatever buzz is happening at fall camp as well. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Hit that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. Be here Monday night, 9 p.m. Central Time for our weekly live show. Follow Josh on Twitter at JoshOnRef. Follow myself on Twitter at at John 9 Williams. The show is at Locked On Sooners. I've been up since 4 a.m. this morning, so running out of steam here. But man, it's been so fun to just talk recruiting, talk OU football, hear from all the coaches and the assistants. Man, it just gets you fired up, gets the hopium going real strong. It was a nice hopium den in the MidFirst Bank Center this morning into afternoon. But we'll talk more about that all week long. But until next time, again, he's Josh Helmer. I'm John Williams. Boomer Sooner.